Call came in, I think it was around 7:58 p.m. We knew that there's 2 fishermen possibly trapped at the high tide in the surf at Portuguese Point. And I got on scene there. I could see Engine 53's flashlights on the top of Portuguese Point, kind of pointing down over the overhang to see if there's anybody below. And then all of a sudden LA comes on the radio saying that 2 victims can see flashlights up above. And they just told them to turn on their cell phone light to shine it, and I could see the little light shining in the distance.
Shaun's a very easygoing, very nice, and it's eye-opening when you actually see people in the moment and you see them get into character where they're going to do what they got to do, putting their training, mentally and physically preparation to do what they need to do. You see that all come together, and it's amazing to watch.
Right when I got on scene, I gave LA the update that I was going down the trail with a paddleboard to access the patients. The safest trail was the longest one, and it brings you to the east side of the cove. The firefighters helped me down the trail and escorted me down all the way down to the bottom to make sure I made it down safe.
When we go down to the water side, once we finally get there, to see the water, to see the power of the ocean crushing up against the rocks, and at any given moment, a person who could be in a wrong position at any given moment would be crushed, rendered unconscious, and it's extremely dangerous. And to see the lifeguards jump in without hesitation, knowing the water, knowing the conditions, but also knowing the risks, is unbelievable.
Once we got on scene, I saw Engine 53s up at the trailhead up on Pepper Tree Lane. I knew Shaun was out already in the water, but I saw where the victims were because they still had their lights on, so I paddled around through that extraction point on the second gorge. I was able to visualize Shaun and do face-to-face communications right there, and by that time I think the boat was just getting on scene.
Once I got to the edge of the cliff, I could see them kind of perched up on this little tiny ledge that they were able to fit themselves, their fishing gear, their buckets, their fishing poles. Waited until I saw Ruben's light out there, so I knew I had some backup close by, and I could see the boat in the distance. Just waited for a little surge to come and caught the wave and rode it up on the tide pools. And then once the water sucked dry, I was able to get to my feet, run up to the victim. We had a language barrier right away, but I was kind of pointing to their bodies and giving them a thumbs up to make sure they're okay. And they said they're okay, but they're definitely scared and had fully clothed jeans, and they weren't ready to be in the water that day. Grabbed one of the guys and tried to explain to him that I was going to wrap the tube around his waist, and then we were going to slowly walk our way down to the water's edge. And then once I got to the edge of the reef, a little wave came and we jumped in, and I swam out to Ruben, who's just right there on the edge in a perfect area for me.
As he jumped in, Shaun had him on the tube, which made it a lot easier for me to log roll him onto the board, put him on the bow of the board, paddle him out maybe 300 yards out to the boat.
And that's when I turned around to make my way back to the other victim. And that's when a set came through and got hit by a wave. I was in the whitewash and I was kind of scrambling around trying to grab something underwater, and finally my hands hooked around a little boulder, and then the wave went by me, but I was able to keep on my feet and edge my way back around to where the victim was, which was more towards the front side of Gorge 2.
I realized we left Shaun in a predicament, but he was able to make contact with the second victim, which was the victim's son.
This time I used the paddleboard, walked him to the edge. A set came, I just told him to get on the front of the board, held it there for him. He held on to the straps in the front, I jumped on the back, and we caught the backwash off the tide pools and somehow made it out unscathed and just paddled out to Ruben, and Ruben helped me bring him the rest of the way back to the Baywatch boat. And no injuries, got him on the boat.
Yeah, I think that situation, I think Shaun might be underplaying it. I mean, that tide was rising. It was a precarious spot on that rocks. Yeah, if those guys didn't have a cell phone, if they weren't able to make communications, I think it would have been a different call. In the morning, we probably would have been looking for their bodies.
Yeah, when we saw the father and son pull up to 53s in the call car chase vehicle, it's definitely a sigh of relief. They didn't have any injuries. None of us had any injuries, and they seemed pretty thankful, and we're thankful that we're able to be there to help them in their time of need.
You know, Shaun's a very humble guy. I think we all did our job, and he especially did it well. And I think one key thing about Shaun to remember on this call is that he actually put himself in danger again the next morning to try and go retrieve their gear.
So I went around like 5 in the morning, back down the trail. I had perched their gear up back up on a little smaller ledge where they weren't standing, just hoping that the next morning I would be able to get it. And sure enough, their backpack, their buckets, their fishing gear was all there. Backpack had their cell phone in it and their car keys. So since they didn't have their car keys that night, we had to buy them an Uber ride home from Fire Station 53 to get them home safe. And at the same time, I was able to get a surf in, and then go straight to my call car shift at 8 in the morning, back in Hermosa. Definitely love what I do.
It's amazing that you realize the depth of experience and the depth of desire to do their job that comes through. And I feel fortunate to work with people like him, like Shaun, and all the others. Like I said, benign because everybody's so easygoing and so personable and nice. But when it comes down to taking care of business, they take care of business, and that's what I like the best.